So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Social Housing Roundtable. My name's Matt Baird. I've been running this for a number of years, but I know we're starting a little late today, so I'll do intros and things later. But we're going to start today with an incredible keynote from Fiona Fletcher Smith, who's coming in to share some of the amazing work that's gone on with SVLG and everything else. So Fiona, I will pass straight over to you.
Brilliant, thank you. And apologies for my lateness, and thank you so much for rejigging timings today to make this happen. I am out this afternoon with our major works contractors looking at the work they do and how social value actually becomes real. So it's a wonderful day and the sun is shining, which is also great for site visits. But I wanted to say a few more general words about social value in relation to housing associations. As you know, I'm Chief Exec of L&Q, but for the last 18 months, I've also been chair of the G15, which is 11 of the largest housing associations in London. If anyone can think of a better name than 15, please tell me. G11 doesn't really do it for me. But we really care passionately about social value and its creation. So talking more generally about housing associations have to be more than landlords. We've got to be more than bricks and mortar. We've got to be catalysts for social change. Our role goes way beyond simply maintaining properties, building new properties. And we are really uniquely positioned to be able to help and support our residents and help them to access all sorts of opportunities to improve the quality of life. This is particularly important at the moment, but for two reasons for me. The cost of living crisis that's affected everybody, including everyone on this call, has really had an impact on the people that we house and we help. So being able to support and help residents through this super, super deep crisis is very vital to us. But also what we have seen over the last couple of decades is the public sector being under tremendous financial pressure and the public sector stepping back in ways that we never would have thought possible. And as landlords, again, supporting our residents, we have to step into the breach in some way and help our residents access all sorts of opportunities, whether that is job training programs, support for their mental health issues, whether that's access to healthcare, education. We've got to be there. We've really got to help. And for me also, the ripple effect of the work we do in terms of social value is really, really important. We impact on others far and wide. And I'll give you some examples. If we think about the work we do on social value, economic empowerment, the programs that we all lead enhance employment opportunities for tenants that leads to not only their own financial stability, but also reduced dependence on the welfare state and then increased local spending. And if we have a chancellor who's really interested in economic growth comes in all shapes and forms, and having residents and tenants of housing associations able to spend some money locally has got to be good for local economies, which aggregates up to the UK as a whole. Residents' health and well-being is absolutely vital, and a lot of the initiatives that we develop through our social value work really promote mental and physical health and result in fewer demands on a really stretched National Health Service. And then there's community cohesion. We have lots of activities that foster a sense of belonging in an area and a place and reduce antisocial behaviour and crime, and therefore build resilient neighbourhoods. So those are just three of the ripple effects that our social value work creates. And then I would say this as Chief Exec, but it's a sound business strategy. While social value aligns with our ethical responsibility, it's also sound for our business strategy. Happy, healthy, and engaged residents, they're more likely to stay in their homes, pay the rent, and look after their homes and their surroundings and the neighbourhoods they live in. And this reduces the costs for any social business, whether that's turnover of empty homes, whether that's vandalism in communal areas. It is all for the good of the business as well as the community and the individual. Creating social value also enhances our reputation, and the reputation of social housing landlords isn't always where it should be. It also attracts participation with local authorities and helps our work with local authorities and the existing ecosystem of a place, whether that's the local authority, charities, or other community groups and businesses working in that area. It strengthens our case for funding and investment because stakeholders can actually see that a difference is being made in a place or for people, and will be more inclined to invest in our business. And then measuring and demonstrating the impact is really, really important for us. And to truly integrate it into the work that we do, we have to be able to measure the impact. And we all do an awful lot of work at the moment, collecting the data and seeing the difference we make. That's so, so important. And having a common measurement where we can all assess the difference we're making is vital. And finally, for us, it's a call to action, isn't it? We have a moral obligation, I feel, to really, really power through on social value. And by doing that, we create a challenge to others to step up and do the same. It's a challenge to our supply chains. It's a challenge to our funders and our investors. And this week, if anything, has to be about a recommitment to embedding social value in everything that we do. From the way we design our services and our partnerships, to the way we work, to the way we think, the way our boards talk about the work we do, and the way they test us and hold us to account. And Erin and Corinne and Matt Corbett from our team were in front of our board last week, having themselves held to account and explaining what they do. And I have to say, it set a tone for the rest of our board meeting that was incredibly positive, because we were able to demonstrate what we're doing through the macro impact, but also through those individual human stories about the difference we're making in people's lives. Now, to talk a little bit more about L&Q, we have, as you know, we're shifting our emphasis to really focus on investing in people's homes and making sure that everybody has a safe and decent homes to live in. We're heading into the third year of our major works investment programme, and part of the procurement of those supply chain partners was really focused on the social value that they could create, as well as the quality of the work and the value for money that we would get for our investment. And we're investing about £3 billion over the next decade to do upgrade works to people's homes. And this afternoon I'll be in Kensal Rise and in Kensington, looking at some really difficult problems that we are trying to solve with our supply chain partners, Morgan Sindall. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the action on the ground. 3 billion for us is a big amount of money, but what's been absolutely astounding is that investment this year alone has actually managed to achieve £23 million worth of social investment. That's in things like employment, apprenticeships, training, and local investments in place-based initiatives. We've set up place-based teams to work in our core local authority areas and to bring our supply chains into those partnerships and that work in place. I know from other bits of work that I do that the training and apprenticeships is absolutely vital. We are desperately short of people to do the work that we need. We only have 85% of the roofing capacity that we need in London and the southeast. Every time it rains, my heart sinks, because I know that my inbox is going to be full of residents whose roofs are leaking. And if we can enable our residents to access training opportunities for jobs like roofing, that's wonderful. But there are also surveying jobs, there are admin jobs, there are work planners. We are short of everybody. I'm interviewing for finance directors even this week, and there were fewer applications than I would have expected. So we need lots of people, and if our social value work can get our residents into the jobs that we have, that is fantastic. So it is a wonderful thing. And I just want to finish by congratulating some of the winners of the Social Value Awards this week. And they are Alpha Track, Hughes Gray, Just Ask Next Gen Group, Thames 21, Pylon, Tom Quinn, the Lower Regions Coalition, which close to L&Q's heart, involves L&Q board members in that, and finally Pinnacle. So absolutely wonderful work, everybody. And I'm so proud of the work that we at L&Q do. And I'm so proud of how we're involved in the wider network on social value. So thank you very much.
Thank you. No, it's fantastic to have you with us. And I don't know, I know you've got a million and one things to be doing. So the fact you've given the time day to give a bit of an overview is fantastic. I know exactly what you mean. Day to day, I work in recruitment. This whole roundtable was born from the fact of trying to bring people together to really discuss the sector more broadly, because one of the big problems was trying to get people to hear about it.
Absolutely.
And obviously that's Ellie Holt's campaign this year as CIH president. But to hear, I think it's also quite refreshing to hear about a chief exec, particularly a business of your side, who's going out on site to go, well, what more can I be doing? I need to see what's going on in the ground. And that isn't something you hear about too often, but I'm imagining for yourself, it's something that the value you get from spending that time compared to the million and one things you could be doing, it is worth every minute.
It's incredible, because when I go out, I hear all sorts of small stories about little things that we could do as L&Q that would make colleagues' jobs easier, or little changes we can make for a resident. And also taking that learning back into the business is so important as well, because part of the problem is we keep making the same mistakes, for example. So it's making sure that that learning is back into the business in some way. And to do it as well today, I've got people from Morgan Sindell, the contractor. I've got people from plant maintenance. I've also got our neighbourhood people, the people who have the day-to-day contact with the residents, who frankly, when I was looking at the work we have to do, have been putting up with awful leaks and bits of the building falling off for the last couple of years. So it is great. I fully expect to get a really hard time from the residents, and I fully expect to get a really hard time from colleagues about, well, why can't you put more money in this? Why can't you go faster? And one of the problems about going faster is skills. You know, we're even short of scaffolders. We, as a country, we do not have enough. It's every single bit of the supply chain is missing pieces. And we've known about this for a long time. So Ellie and I get very angry and frustrated, especially when we talk to government people who go, oh, yes, we've got a plan. Yeah, you've had a plan for years. I want to see action. And that's where social value and working with communities and working with, you know, what we've seen, for example, on the Lower Regions Canal group that L&Q work very closely with. It's like local people rolling their sleeves up and doing and learning from how they're doing as well. It's brilliant.
I've heard it for so long. I almost band the same drum, just in a slightly different area, because I get really frustrated when people say, well, how do we attract people to housing? I was like, well, we attract people to the NHS and the pay isn't great. We attract people to public services and the pay isn't great, because they understand the social impact the roles are doing. And no matter what the pay is, people will still want to do a role that delivers social impact. They just don't know about housing. And it doesn't help when the media narrative is always so negative, and we've never had that kind of, actually there is so much worse, but also it's so broad as a sector.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
And we are getting more and more people standing up and championing it, but then it's very difficult when, you know, there's no major publications that have come out saying that the housing sector is great. There have been 2 or 3 this year alone that said actually the housing sector is failing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I mean, it is. You just get such satisfaction from a lot of what we do, and sometimes it's those little failures. You know, I'm not saying we get everything right all the time, but we do 500,000 interactions with residents every year. And yeah, when you're doing that volume, things will go wrong. And it's about understanding your mistakes, picking them up, apologizing, being humble about where you got it wrong, and actually learning from that. And the problem is, for the media outlets, they love a bad story, don't they? They love a tale when it all goes horribly wrong, where actually the good news far outweighs. I don't know if your organisation has something like this, but we've got Viva Engage, which it used to be called Yammer. It's our internal sort of intranet. And instead of scrolling through the misery that is Twitter or X, which we have left, by the way, instead of scrolling through that, when I'm having a bad day, I go onto Viva Exchange, and the stories being swapped by colleagues about the difference that people are making in people's lives. It is just tremendous. The way people are going above and beyond, the way people are just really trying to solve problems in a state at the minute that's fairly shaky. particularly around health and mental health. I mean, access to mental health services is just incredible. I remember a Friday night a couple of months ago. There was a poor gentleman who's ex services, and he was having a massive mental health crisis. And the woman who was trying to deal with it in the end of the phone, she just texted me, said, "You just need to be aware this is happening." And between us, the two of us are on a Friday night on the internet trying to find charities, and we get there's an amazing charity that does PTSD in servicemen, which is what this chap was suffering from, and we were able to sort of get them to intervene with his NHS support. And the Daily Mail weren't putting that in the front of the paper on Monday morning, were they? They'll put something else entirely that's it's legitimate, but
we recently. I'm co-chair of the board for Spring Housing in Birmingham, and we recently had our 10-year anniversary, and you just had some of the stories which came through, and the work that's gone in just to turn around one or two people hear that. That's when you kind of go, every single last bit of this is worth it, and we are doing everything we can. But as I was sat down with another chief exec on Wednesday of this week, and trying to find that balance between going, our homes are. So many of the homes aren't fit for purpose. We know that. So much money that would need to be spent to retrofit, it isn't actually viable. And yet, when we're building new properties, there's evidently backlash going, we haven't fixed our homes, why are you building new ones? That constant balance between the two is huge. So when we're looking at social value, again, it goes back to that piece about you going out today. It shows that you care about, and again, I think it's something I'd love to see from more exec teams generally, is remembering why we're doing this. Showing that actually the buck lies with whoever's leading the business, going, look, if I need to go out and get my links, that's fine. I will tell you why the decisions are made doing, and I'll show you what we're trying to do to fix it. But housing, unfortunately, is a sector where you can't win almost a lot of the time, because there's always, and so the wins you can get are so important.
But you know what you need to do though is hold on to those wonderful stories. I was at a conference last year where a woman came up to me and she said, I want to introduce myself because I know you're in charge of L&Q. And you just, oh, okay, I'll just get my notebook out to take down the list of repairs that you clearly have. And she went, no, don't do that. She said, 27 years ago, I was an inpatient in the Maudsley psychiatric hospital in South London. And I was being discharged and I was very nervous about going back into the community. I got supported housing with L&Q, and that was 27 years ago. You saved my life. And I went, oh, that's wonderful. She said, no, but it didn't stop there. She said, I then went on to have a son, and my son then benefited from a bursary from the L&Q Foundation, and he went to university. And she said he wouldn't have been able to do that without the financial help you were able to give me. And then she said, and then the final thing is, we've started replacing the windows in my creaky old Victorian conversion. I'm getting new windows this week. And I said, probably inappropriate, can I hug you? Because it was just, there we were. She started that with, you saved my life. And that, that's what we have to remember. Sometimes we are saving people's lives. It's incredible.
I couldn't agree more. And there's been a comment in the chat there said that I'm care experienced and would love to see more joined up working for those vacancies and those who need corporate parental support. I love housing. I joined in July from the VCSE sector and I'm really enjoying it. And I think that's it. You're so proud of the fact that so many people who join housing stay in it for a whole career.
Forever. Yeah, I joined when I was 19. I'm still here. And I could have gone, I was offered 2 envelopes by the HR manager. And one envelope was vehicle taxation and the other one was housing. And I just accidentally picked, because he didn't tell me what they were. So I just picked an envelope and housing. Oh, that's interesting. So I spent my first year photocopying was my job. Back in the day when you had to, there was no manual feed thing. You had to lift it, put the thing into it. So I did a whole year of that and still loved it.
I mean, at least that's, we're not asking people to photocopy, but we are, but there's so much that you can do and so much you can have value on, and it's fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know you've got to go on. Are there any questions anyone quickly has for Fiona before we let her run on and get out on site and everything else?
Kensal Rise, yeah.
Yes, Chichi, please do come in. Hopefully we'll get you unmuted. There we are, lovely. Can't hear you.
I've got a wonderful quote from Chi-Chi in the briefing that the team did for me.
See whether we can just get a mic loaded up and then we can hopefully hear from Chi-Chi herself as well, which would be lovely. No, can't hear you. Oh, difficult. What was the quote, Fiona? Just while we're getting Chi-Chi to
let me just get it up on the screen. It was about the importance of social value. Oh no, God, my screen's now deciding it's going to go slow. But this was Chi-Chi, this is the influence you have on my team, that they're putting quotes from you into the briefing. Oh, come on, computer, don't be. So here it says, social value is not merely a nice to have. It is crucially necessary for meeting community needs, joint agency and strengthening relationships. Therefore, all, in block capitals, supply chain partners and procuring authorities should invest in social value and infrastructure. So there you go. So that was to remind me what it's all about. It's not a nice to have, it's essential.
And I guess stories like that really make a massive difference day to day.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Gigi, can we hear you? Oh, you're going to type. Okay. Absolutely fine. We'll get done. Does anyone else have a quick question for Fiona before what? Here we go. So Keith has just put a question in the chat there. The discussion points at a conflict for many of us. Are we social landlords or social services? I believe without the other, and maybe I need to stop moaning about us being dragged into mental health and dependency issues and the lack of engagement from other agencies. And he too remembers the days of carbon paper.
Yeah.
Is this something that you're trying to balance out yourself?
Absolutely. And it is really, really tough. The thing is, though, as a social landlord, you inevitably are providing far more support than your standard landlord, aren't you? And if we care about the individuals who live in an L&Q home, you've got to care about everything. I would like to get us back to a place that we're more advocates than we are doers. So that a resident with a mental health problem, our job is to get them the qualified support they need from the NHS or whoever is supporting them. Unfortunately, as the state has receded because of austerity in the last 20 years, we've had to step in. Now, I do think there has to be a line somewhere, but at L&Q, we employ mental health specialists, for example. We had a dreadful case last year where we had a chap standing in the reception with a can of petrol, and he said, what we managed to glean from him, his whole support network had collapsed and he wanted to kill himself. And it was just after the Met Police had said, we're not getting involved in mental health cases anymore. But because he was going to take a few people with him, they were prepared to take him to a place of safety and get him some support. When the team rang up his social worker, they were offered a case conference in 6 weeks' time. And that was because they just didn't have the resource. So whether we like it or not, we're stepping in. But I think we need to be clear that we are stepping in. That we will support, but we support as advocates. We don't support as the doer.
And it's that balance that's so hard when we have, as we touched on before, we attract people to the sector who want to help. So saying, look, you can help up to this line, but actually don't help beyond because you haven't got capacity is very difficult to say.
Very hard. It's very hard because you want people. That's exactly what I want in my team. I want people who care, who want to help. But at the same time, it's like you care to that line. And that's where advocacy is so brilliant, because you can really be that champion for the residents and sort of, I know with my mother-in-law at the minute, some of the we're sort of battling with the care service and how do we get her the help she needs, and even sort of pension credits with a 240 question form. I know my way around these things. What on earth do you do if you don't?
Gigi's point, she's managed to raise it in the chat, was that Hyde, like L&Q, is fortunate enough to have an Excel level social value sponsor, Rod Holdsworth, our CFRO, but others, including those represented on the struggle to get buy-in. How can they encourage their execs or board members to take up the responsibility of being a good social value sponsor if you weren't already a believer? What would make you sit up and want to sponsor? You mentioned social value making business sense, which is key.
That's it. That is absolutely it. It's got to be. It's part of your business strategy. So if you think about that 23 million that we social value that we've captured from our supply chain this year, I mean that's 23 million we wouldn't have if we didn't put the effort into this. It's absolutely vital. Also, if you think about those organisations who aren't as champions as obviously Hyde and L&Q and many others today on the call are, it's about a lot of people we borrow money from and who invest in housing associations and other businesses are very interested in ESG. Yeah, the environmental, fine, but the social, the S of the ESG, this is it. This is absolutely it. So often with our lenders, we get preferential rates because of the work we do in terms of social value. So it's business sense. And if you can't appeal to pull the heartstrings and appeal to their humanity, appeal to their purse strings, and yeah, just there's money in this. It's worth doing.
And then that you get back is worth 10 times what you're putting in anyway. Quick question from...
You just said it, appeal to the head, not just the heart. Yeah.
Absolutely. How long have you got, Fiona? Do you need to go? Or
I have about 5 minutes. Well, 3 minutes. I need to leave it for about 5 past.
Okay. Absolutely fine. Steve, very quick question from you. Do come in.
Yeah. I just want to agree. I mean, the landlord. I'm a tenant. The landlords have not moved away, but they've added to their core business with all these social values, employment advice and money coaches and things like that, mental health and all the rest of it. I agree there's got to be a certain amount because they are your customers. But I just feel that the government are relying on the landlords to do their job. And one of the concerns I've got is around the smaller landlords. Yeah. Can they afford it? I mean, they're bringing in all these new regulations about, how to treat your customers and how to deal with them, et cetera, which to an extent is nothing to do with their core business. And they're doing it to take the funding away from the government. Or the local authorities or whatever.
I'm going to let Fiona come in, Steve, because she's only got a couple of minutes. Fiona, back to you.
Steve, I completely agree with you. I mean, over the last, well, pick a random number, 14 years, we've seen our income being eroded. So our ability to do what we used to be able to do is pushed as well. At the same time, all of the public services have money taken away. I can assure you that very quietly in the background, we, particularly as the G15, we're making that case to government that the whole system has got to work properly. And it's good to see 22 billion go into the NHS, but what about social care? Social care for me is still that real problem issue that's not being funded. What about training education? If I'm getting very trite letters back from government ministers going, yeah, we know there's a problem, and they aren't doing anything about it. And then, but the bottom line for us all as well is about collaboration. Because I think there's more that we big associations can do to support the smaller associations in some way. We've tried to do it at L&Q through Build London Partnership and the development side. So I think there's more that can be done in all sorts of ways for us to support smaller associations. Because if it's hard for L&Q, and we've got a massive balance sheet. So I can't imagine what it's like for somebody who's maybe with 10,000 homes or smaller and trying to make ends meet when the government keeps taking your income away.
We've got just under 1,000, and I can tell you it's an interesting balance. But thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go and be brilliant out on site, but just a massive thank you to you for joining today. If anybody has joined late, it has been recorded, and you will get a chance to listen to Fiona's words back. But just a massive thank you to you for today. It's certainly appreciated.
Really enjoyed it, and I'd love to see you all in person at some stage if you could do that.
Sounds good to me. It would be a great thing to put together.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Fiona. Take care. There was just a point there made in the chat actually from Julie Naylor, which is said, I found it's good if you know of a new contractor coming online. I contact them as early in their contact as possible to chat about what might be available in terms of social value. For example, I have just approached our Legionella contractor and they're going to help me deliver some Legionella awareness work with our older person schemes. Sometimes it's just about asking the question, and I couldn't agree more. I've actually done a lot of work as well with our local fire service. They are always willing to come out and do some incredible work. It's just about asking the question, and some of the insight they can provide is fantastic. So on to the second half of today then. So today's session, I appreciate we kind of jumped through the intro a little bit because we wanted to get Fiona on as fast as we could. So my name is Matt Baird. I've been running the Social Housing Roundtable now for about 4 years, and the Social Housing Roundtable was set up as a service to bring people together every week to discuss key themes in social housing. We've done about 160 of these. And when I had the team from the SVLG reach out and said, hey, Matt, look, we're doing our Social Value Week. We'd love to end it with a bit of an insight into some of the work that we've done, shared from some of our finalists in the awards, but also get the chance to really highlight why this is important and where this whole process came from. So I'm delighted we've been able to put today together. I'm going to introduce Aaron and Debs to begin with, who are going to do a bit of an overview of some of the insight from this week. And then we've got 3 speakers who are going to come on and share about some of their own projects and some of the awards finalists and everything like that. So Aaron, shall I pass to yourself or Debs first?
Let's go Debs, because I think I just need to get my login sorted here, because I think I might be in this room a couple of times. So I'm just going to just double check I'm not in here multiple times, and we can get Debs on.
No worries. If you shared your link, it might be that other people have got this. It pops up with your name, but have a quick look. But Debs, I'll pass over to you. Please do make introductions, and it's brilliant to have you here.
Thank you. And apologies, I'm not as exciting as Aaron with my cloned personality all over the screen. It was very cool seeing his name multiple times. So yeah, I'm Debs, or Debbie, or Deborah, never mind. Generally have been called something worse, so I'm always happy with any of those 3. And I am the Social Impact Manager at SNG, so that's Sovereign Network Group. We say we're newly merged, but it feels like it happened a little while ago now. But we're in that process of bringing our teams together. So we have around about 83,000 homes, I think, now, covering kind of the London, Hertfordshire area, and then southwards along that M4 corridor and across to the Isle of Wight. So quite a large geographical span. And yeah, I look after social value with our supply chain, and also how we measure the impact of what we do as an organisation, and dabble every year with our ESG reporting. Although we now have got as a result of the merger, we now have got a sustainability team. So I may do a little bit less of that in the future. But yeah, really related to what Fiona was kind of saying around actually social value is shifting, and I've felt it within my role. So I think my role was established around about 4 years ago, although I've been with the organisation for about 7 years. And I have to say, like, the ESG agenda really did offer a bit of a platform to extend conversations around social value, and increase its prevalence, maybe, or status within the organization, because suddenly it was appearing in this criteria that had real impact on the business, and how it might go about its activity, and how it might access finance, and all of those wonderful things. So yeah, huge growth in the last 4 years, I would say. But I have been really grateful to receive the support of the SVLG, Social Value Leadership Group, for the duration of my time in this post. So I met Chi quite early on in my social value career, and received support from the network, which has just been amazing. It is a cluster of housing associations that offer their social value specialists a space to network and learn best practice. And as part of that, over the last couple of years, they've developed this wonderful thing called Social Value Week, which is why we're here. And it's been a magnificent week full of so many different activities. There's been sustainability conversations, employment and training, governance, like you name it, it's probably been in there somewhere. So yeah, just really grateful to be here. That was a very long introduction. Hopefully you're sorted, Aaron.
That's wonderful. Yeah, Aaron, I'll bring you in.
Yeah, no, it is sorted. And I did have a clone in the group, which I did manage to take care of. So it's just me now, which is great. So my name's Aaron Dohnt. I am the head of impact and reporting at the L&Q Foundation, which is obviously the charitable arm of L&Q. The foundation is primarily responsible for the delivery of social programs, so community investment, employment training, tenancy sustainment interventions for our residents and for their communities. So we deliver a lot of these programs internally, but we also, Matt, now, and of the last year or so, As Fiona mentioned, the major works investment, the £3 billion, we now have a team of community development leads who, as part of their role, they also go out into the community and deliver programs and fund organizations. They also manage our supply chain partners on the delivery of their social value commitments. So as part of that tendering process, we had an open-ended question on how much social value they intend to deliver as part of that that contract, and we've been now holding them to account on those significant amounts of social value that they intend to deliver. And we have one person will be looking after one contractor, so that we have direct attention on our supply chain, the delivery, and the impact of what's actually happening in the supply chain now, because we understand that this is a huge swing for the industry and for the sector. This kind of investment only comes around once in a lifetime, and we see it as a huge opportunity. So my role in all of this, linked in with the SVLG, is to be the kind of overarching oversight over what's happening with this data collection, with our social value, and combining it and making it all make sense, looking at where we can deliver the social value. We're looking at where we can make the most of the commitments that have been provided by our supply chain, and looking at where our internal services can make the most impact. The question we had earlier, which is, how much can we do to help our residents, and about the gaps in state services, which we know are there. So we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to help our residents, to help sustain the business as a housing association, so that we can keep residents in their homes for longer, with a better state of life, keeping them paying their rent, sustaining L&Q as a business, so that we can continue to build more homes to address the other problems in society, which is essentially what housing associations were set up for, as their core purpose was being that, sort of plugging those gaps. So yeah, it's without the help of the SVLG, without their guidance, without Chichi, without the other people in the room here. I know I can see the list of participants here. There's a lot of people here from the group, which is an incredible amount of support that we get through that team. So it's great to be here, and thanks very much for Fiona again for her words earlier. And I hope that we have a nice session. I'm sure we've got some questions that have been popping up throughout the week, and some that have come up in the chat. So I think it's about that's all my introduction, really.
Thank you very, very much. And I just want to, before we go on to questions and things, just in terms of the week itself, and Debs, I'll start with you. I guess, what have been your highlights of the week? What have been those things that have really stood out to you and gone, actually, this was worth all of the effort and time that goes into it? Because I know what it's like trying to put together one of these every week, never mind trying to do 5 whole days of it. So what have been those things that have really stood out to you this week?
Yeah, so I was having to think about this earlier, actually. And it's a little bit of a comparison from last year as well, to a degree. This year on LinkedIn, there has just been such a real energy of information and stories, and it's just been really lovely to see some of the heartfelt and genuine lasting impact that is being created as a result of social value activity. So I remember, like, Christina Waits popped a story up of loads of different things that have been going on, with some really beautiful pictures of volunteering time and how money is making a difference if there's been financial donations, just huge different activities that have been going on across the sector that are just really making a difference where they're needed most. But also the sharing of best practice has been kind of happening. So it was great to see the podcast around employment and training with Kelly from MTVH and others. I think we're at a funny moment within the sector, I guess, at the moment. Costs are going up, we know that, and we're seeing some housing associations where development levels are dropping, where potentially other team areas are being kind of sliced, and actually remembering that our supply chain can step in and fill some of these spaces, particularly around employment and training, is massive. And thinking back to what Fiona was kind of saying earlier, really, on the skill shortages around scaffolding and roofing, these are all trades that we will be needing as a housing sector. So the more and more we can look at using our social value activity to do things like develop sector-based skills academies, and actually it's win-win. Why wouldn't we? Like you said, it's an open door. People, like, businesses are up for working together with other businesses to try and kind of make this stuff happen. It's benefiting everybody. And then just lastly, I really loved the top 10 tips for success that Alim had kind of spoken through. It was just so engaging, and essentially to me was kind of, if you wanted to sit down and reflect on, right, I need to do this social value thing and I don't know how, or if you were sat there and thinking, oh, I want to grow this a bit, that little 11-minute snippet was kind of everything that you needed to consider in a nutshell. And so, yeah, I loved that.
And I mean, I know there's a few people who've joined today who are kind of part of the roundtable community that might have missed a lot of this. Is there an easy way for people to catch up with some of these sites that have come out this week?
Oh, definitely. So we can pop a link to the microsite from Hyde into the chat. Oh, thanks, Chichi. And you can find loads of stuff on there, loads of links out. But it's also, we'll stick the hashtag in the handle for the week as well. If you search that on LinkedIn, you'll be able to connect with like loads of the stuff that's been going on. We've all been posting things, liking things.
It's been amazing.
The hashtag. So do hop on to LinkedIn and have a little dig around, and I'm sure you'll find a little gem.
It's been absolutely fantastic, and I'll make sure that, you know, some of those points you've raised today, I'll send out to the mailing list. I'll add everyone who's here to the main list so you can follow up on the recording if you've missed it today. But I think it's just great to see just how much there was in terms of wider engagement and things to get involved in. It's been fantastic. Aaron, is there anything else you would add in terms of maybe some of your highlights of the week before I bring in some of our finalists?
Yeah, I mean, I have two things that I wanted to highlight, which, I mean, Deb has covered quite a lot off, and I think the engagement and the kind of energy that's been shown around this week in the discussions that I've been having, and last night at the awards ceremony, it was really the culmination of all of this energy, and it was the room itself was alive. You knew everyone was there for the right reason. It was, you know, just felt like a connected mind around everyone knew what we were here for. Everyone knew very clearly what the kind of advantages of this social value kind of attitude is. So that, I guess I just want to reiterate again, Deborah, that's I felt the same. The two things I wanted to mention was, one, this week, I think when we started talking about this week, this social value week, it seemed like an opportunity to be like, let's talk about how great all the social values that we're doing. Yeah, it's great. But actually, something that I think has been an unforeseen discussion has been the challenge about social value. And it's been an open opportunity to open up and be challenged about why we do this. And the same question that I referred to back before, like, housing associations are there to build houses. Why are we delivering employment? Why are we delivering this? Why are we doing that? And these are questions that I think should be asked and should be continued to be asked, and to reinforce why we do this for people, why we do this for our communities. And this week has been an opportunity to talk about the challenge of social value, and not just in the delivery of it, you know, the obstacles that we face, the different platforms, the way we report on it, the differentiation between, you know, the qualitative and quantitative reporting that we get out of social value, and what is more meaningful, and those kind of, I think this is a really great opportunity to be challenged on that. And those conversations are happening. And I think that's, you know, nothing is perfect in this sense, and the way we talk about social value is not perfect. And it was only, and we just need to keep talking about it and keep that dialogue moving to push the dial along and get people on board. So I think that's one of the things I really, you know, value out of this week so far, is having that opportunity to be challenged and to, you know, step back and say, you know what, let's think about this a bit more. Let's make this better. The second thing I wanted to highlight was actually, it did happen last night at the award ceremony. We had an opportunity to hear from people who are directly benefiting from some of the social value, and not to blow our own trumpet, but at L&Q, so we have a scholarship program which is called the Turlough O'Brien Scholarship. It's a favorite of our board. It's a favorite program that we have running. Last year, we faced some financial turbulence, and we had to cut the funding to that program, which was going to leave several graduates or potential graduates without the scholarship that we were kind of working towards. Our supply chain partners, a number of supply chain partners jumped in and bridged that gap. So those students were able to go on and start their tertiary education, and in much needed fields, medicine, sports science, things like that. And we had a graduate talk last night, and it's so much more impactful to see these people and to hear their stories in person than it is to read an article about it or see a LinkedIn post go through. And I think that one story from that one person, I think when we talk about social value in terms of numbers and monetary impact, and it gets lost under this, like 20 billion this and 10,000 here and 5,000 jobs over 2 years, that the individuals get lost in there. And I think it's really important to kind of look back and actually remember that when these employment programs are getting people into work, or when their scholarship is being delivered, that one person's life is changed, and their children's life is being changed, their family's life and their community. And it's not just, it's not just about the big numbers. It's about the impact of the individual and their lives and how that's going to change from now. So that's, I think, really being driven home this week. And I think that's something that we need to sort of celebrate, and that has been. So yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity, Chi and the SVLG, for putting this together to be able to shine that light.
Couldn't agree more. And there's some amazing. It's so easy to find, negative news about social housing via LinkedIn and media and all the rest of it. And actually, if you just follow that hashtag this week, it's been absolutely superb. So we have got 3 people that we're going to hear from today, which is fantastic. So 3 of our finalists from the awards, unless I'm absolutely mistaken, that have been nominated to kind of come and speak today on some of the work they've been doing around social value and on some of the impact of this week. So I'm going to start with Toby DeGuero, if he's with us. I saw him pop into the room. So Toby, over to you.
Hi there. How's everyone doing?
All good. Nice to see you.
Yeah, great. We won the Best in Innovation Award last night, and it was a fantastic event. Thank you for having us.
Where are you from? I need to introduce.
Yeah. So I'm from Thames 21. Thames 21's a river charity. So we work across London with communities to basically improve waterways. So our projects usually have a mix of environmental focus and a mix of focus on getting the community involved and sort of connecting people with their river or with their lake or waterway. Do you want me to give a little bit?
Yeah, please do. Yeah. Talk around some of the work that's gone on around that social value stuff, but also, I guess, what you've seen across the course of this week.
In terms of like social value from that project that we got nominated for, so that was we built along with Peabody, who nominated us. We built a wetland system in Galleons Lake in Thamesmead, and a large focus of this was getting the community involved through every step of the process. So consultations at the beginning, where we picked some designs and plants for the wetlands. We held these consultations at community centres. When it came to the building of the wetlands, we got community planting days, and we had these sort of floating reed beds that we built with community volunteers. We planted lots of wildflower meadows with school children, local schools, and a few other volunteers as well as sort of more relaxed walks we did around the lake, sort of just describing what wetlands are and how they benefit the environment. So there was a large focus on this wetland and this lake is for the community, and how can we get them to sort of take ownership of this wetland and get the value that they deserve from it, basically.
Sorry, I lost all my ability to chat there for a second. I'm back.
Sorry.
So in terms of then, I guess the impact on the award and the news stories that came out, I guess what's the bit I guess yourselves have been most proud of at Thames 21, because it sounds like an incredible project. This episode of the Social Housing Roundtable is sponsored by Alertical. Alertical helps as many people as possible feel safe, connected and informed by combining ingenious technology and award-winning human contact. Alertical's digital engagement solution helps social landlords proactively know their customers and properties by putting a portable touchscreen in every home, offering a daily property check through the optional OK Each Day service, plus repairs reporting, tenant surveys and much more. They also provide Beyond Warden Calls, an easier, simpler and lower cost wireless warden call solution with video door entry, dispersed telecare and smoke alarms. Alertical works with over 60 housing providers across the UK to enhance two-way engagement between customers and landlords. In 2022, Alertical won the Queen's Award for Enterprise and Innovation, and in 2023 won Housing Supplier of the Year. I'm delighted to have them as our sponsor of the Social Housing Roundtable throughout 2024.
Yeah, I think the thing that we're probably most proud of from this project is we got, as a result of the work done there, we got an article or a section in London's Good Green Parks. So this is a sort of released every year, sort of good parks in London, sort of parks that have shown particular involvement of the community, particular environmental contribution, and Galleons Lake was one of these parks this year. So that was a really great reward for all the hard work done by everyone on the project to see that. Yeah.
Amazing. And what's coming next for Thames 21?
So we do all sorts of stuff. A lot of it's sort of, we do a lot of natural flood management stuff, a lot of sort of water quality stuff. So some big things that are coming up for us. We have a big project in Greenwich where we are trying to hold back a lot of water in woodlands. And again, there's a key sort of community focus here. So the main people affected by sort of flooding in that area are local residents. So as well as sort of putting in the measures to help stop that flooding and monitor that flooding, we also want to get people involved. So we want people to help us build leaky dams, which are sort of natural dams made from wood. We want them to help us get involved in the citizen science. So the monitoring of this, that means sort of water quality checking, taking pictures, checking flow of the river, all sorts of stuff. So there's a large, focus on when this project ends, how can the community take over and keep monitoring that river and keep, sort of keep checking that the work is being done and, have a bit more of an ownership over that river as well.
Fantastic. I know Lucy's just put in the chat there the link to the website. A massive congratulations to you, because it sounds like not just an amazing project, but to win last night as well must have been a lovely kind of, I guess, stamp of approval, having all that work that went into it. It must have just been a lovely moment.
Yeah, it was really fantastic. Yeah, and there were definitely a lot of other great nominations, and I was very impressed with the talent that I saw last night. Some fantastic speakers. So it was definitely, we're in good company. And we were proud to win that award last night.
Well, massive congratulations, Toby, and thank you for sharing some of your insight today. I know we're probably going to get some questions through shortly, but I'm going to bring in you, Alina, who I think is going to share some of the insight from some of their week and their work in social value too. So, you, Alina, are you with us at the moment? Hoping so.
Yes, I am. Hello. Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good to see you all. My name is Evelina. I'm working for Pinnacle Group, and we've been successful to win the award yesterday. It is a very, very nice to see all the faces yesterday and so many people contributing to social value works, which we know is very essential because it helps not only create the balance between the economic growth, but also between, the well-being of our society. So organizations and all the individuals who actually focus on social value not only improve the lives of others, but also it's like they lay the groundwork for long-term successes and obviously for the healthier planet, because we're doing loads of stuff. For example, like I don't know, doing the green spaces, you know, creating a bugs and insects hotel to create a better environment. We also have been able to help a football team to support them and get them the new T-shirts and new laptops for different kind of community centers, that when young people can actually create the music. For maths lessons, for the English lessons, there's lots of different projects which we are able to do thanks to Social Value, thanks to Match My Projects, and obviously working closely with Metropolitan, who actually are putting up lots of different you know, projects, and we are really going forward and we're not stopping, definitely not.
And what award did you win last night? What was the area that you were nominated for?
We were nominated for Social Value Excellence Award as the champions, and we've got this award. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. I mean, I know obviously being an area manager at someone like Pinnacle, it's, you know, job titles in housing can mean a huge variety of things. But to hear of the work you're doing purely focused on social value, was that what attracted you to the role in the first place?
To be honest, that was the big thing which we was always wanted to change, because before Match My Project, it was always almost the same kind of social works, which was improving some gardens, doing the same thing, doing the clearances for the residents, for vulnerable, which was also very nice to do it for vulnerable people, especially older and, you know, people with disabilities. But we want to go out and do something else. So we started doing like working with the food hubs. That was just after COVID, which we know there was lots of people struggling. So we've been doing delivery of the food. We've been buying loads of herbs and seeds and stuff like that. And that's where the whole idea started changing around, you know, cooperation between us and Metropolitan, that we can do some more and different stuff.
Absolutely wonderful. It's massive congratulations to you. It sounds like it's been an awful lot of work that's gone into it, but the reward has been superb and worth every bit of it. So again, a massive congratulations to you. I know one more person we're going to hear from, and then I've got some questions that are being sent through. If anyone has further ones, do please put them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you shortly. So Dom Ribeiro, Dom, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here. Marvelous. What a group this is. Yeah, I thought Fiona was such a good advocate for all the challenges that we face trying to execute. I think from my perspective as social value manager within Pinnacle, we had a bit of a head start because we were working with the DWP on the NEA program. So I had a national footprint of mentors who were already looking after the socioeconomic development of individuals and families and social enterprise. So it was quite an easy transition to move into social value per se, particularly on the service family accommodation, 49,000 homes there. So that's where we really sort of cut our teeth in the world of how do we just, we're here to help, how can we help? And then to see that move so effortlessly across into the regional teams, and you've heard an example in MTVH, to meet with Kelly and to be able to start joining up some of those dots. So we do an awful lot of work around our Armed Forces Covenant, which we just reaffirmed this week. And our veterans community that we serve, we've got 102 social enterprise that we support in the military family. But when we're talking in the communities, and we're finding that there are really vulnerable veterans in each of these communities, and we can help them, we can support them, we can get them unstuck, we partnered with Combat Stress, for example, not just as a fundraising charity partner, but to actually deliver that what's next for the individual. Is it self-employment? Is it employability support? What do they need to unstick themselves and their families? That's applicable in all of these communities, and we're so really proud of that direction of travel. And the VCSE support, that I've not met anybody who isn't absolutely passionate about supporting those that really want to serve their communities. And so if we can help those founders and trustees to feel a bit more confident about their future, a bit more sustainable, and stop being so stressed, it just destroys me. So that's going to be a real area of focus. I think we've had the same challenges around the corporate piece of making sure we can get that commercial message that gathers and garners that support. So whether that's sort of engaging at sort of bid cycle, ITT response, mobilization, we go into delivery, then we celebrate the good news stories and the real impact that we have on people's lives. There's a good commercial argument there, which allows and facilitates that delivery that we need to do so much more of. So I'll stop talking.
Oh no, please don't. It's. I mean, firstly, look, as somebody who comes from a military family where dad, brother, stepmom, stepdad are all military, how I ended up in social housing recruitment's a whole nother world. I think it's amazing to hear of the work you're doing, but also a question I wanted to ask you before we go to more general questions, really. For like the last 2 and a bit years, you've been head of social value at Pinnacle. It's a big role in a big business. However, 13 years ago when I started recruiting in housing, and even more recently than that, social value roles didn't exist. How important do you feel that role? Obviously, it's difficult, maybe you're answering when it's your own, but how important do you think that role has become? And more importantly, why do you think there is now this true kind of advocacy for a position which is being seen more and more, and yet it's so important?
Well, if you look at, again, back into the commercials, the Procurement Act, this isn't going away. This is becoming ever more critical in every single community. So if you're talking about 10, 20, 30% bid weighting, then you've got a voice, you've got a position at the table, you're aligning community needs, you're being able to listen to the community needs analysis and saying, okay, how can we help most effectively? That's just shifted dramatically. It can no longer be a box ticking, we're doing it just because we're good corporate systems. That's absolute nonsense now. It's this a fundamental part of delivery. And so I do challenge, we within Pinnacle have the strap lines of championing service families on the service family side, and transforming communities and changing lives on the community side. And it's really challenging that the whole time going, are we doing that? Is this true? And it's becoming ever more part of the fundament of delivery across all contracts, and that's just hugely healthy and exciting. But we've got to keep listening, keep learning. We've got so much more to do in social mobility, apprenticeships we can be so much better at. It's never going to stop. We're going to just keep getting better and better and better, and it's baby steps in the right direction. So I think listening to the G15's approach and the SVLG is just it's tremendous, really exciting.
Thank you so much. And I couldn't agree more. It's something where I recall a friend of mine who became a social value recruiter a little while ago, and everyone thought he was mad because he was going to get involved in social value roles because no one really knew what it was in the recruitment industry. Like, it was still one of those roles which was so rare, particularly in housing, that you weren't seeing enough. This was about 5-6 years ago, and now it's a huge, huge market, and there's so many people that are businesses that are desperate to really improve their social value and don't know how, and you need a specialist to do it. So massive congratulations to Pinnacle, but also to, I guess, businesses like yours for at least investing in it in the right way.
Well, I think it's that consistency of language. We're getting better at that. 3 years ago, I mean, social value still means many things to many people, but if you know what lens they're looking at and what perspective they have, then you can talk to them about it and make it make sense to them. And the more we get that language consistent, it gets less about educating, more about doing, and that's the direction I believe we're going. I'm not having to repeat myself quite so often now.
Really, really glad to hear it. So we did have some questions that have come through. So this is for obviously our 3 winners. I was going to say finalists, but winners. So congratulations to you all. I wasn't sure who was winning before I got the names through, so congratulations. But also for Deb or Aaron or anyone who'd like to dive in. So the first question that come through, this was an anonymous one that had come through via Slido. How do we break free from the rhetoric that social value asks at the point of tender will reduce value for money on the contract? Don't know if anyone would like to dive in on that one. It doesn't have to be one of our 5, it could be anybody in the room, really, because I know we've got people from the SVLG here too. Would anyone like to dive in on that one?
Yeah.
We'll have Aaron, then Deb. So Aaron, go
Let's
first, and then Deb.
So I had to think about this one, and I guess it's tricky when you talk about value for money, because that kind of can mean different things to different people. Once upon a time, it meant, what can you get for the cheapest amount? But now the term value for money has become less about cost and more about a holistic kind of impact that, is a result of a tender or a process, that procurement, the procurement note in, the Social Value Act and the new Act coming in, next year is going to change the way we define what value for money means, and it's tricky because it's always a balance between cost and impact and delivering. We are talking about procuring a service that's supposed to deliver a project or a outcome, and social value is kind of attached to that as a separate piece. But we actually want something. The project to deliver is primarily what we're doing. So I think we will break free because the definitions will change over time, and I think it's a matter of time and a matter of discussion and a matter of government encouragement for this to become more mainstream discussion. And I think it is changing, and it already is at the moment. That's what I wanted to say on that one.
Thank you, Deb. Is there anything you'd add?
Yeah, I completely agree. The only thing that I was going to add is I was reminded when Fiona was talking of this question, actually, when she was talking about this is one of it's morally right to do this. This is what we should be doing, and yeah, I fully agree with what you said, Aaron.
Thank you, Deb. I mean, Toby, obviously this ties in very, I guess, close to what you yourselves were doing, and that idea of saying at the beginning, that question, how do we break free from the rhetoric that social value asks at the point of tender will reduce value for money on the contract? You win contracts because of the social value element, so it must be an interesting kind of pushback yourself.
Could you explain the question?
Yeah, so
I'm not sure I quite get it.
So how do we break free? So there's a rhetoric, isn't there, that social value in some way takes away from value because you're investing, I guess, in different ways, and yet you win contracts based on the fact of the social value you're adding. Do you think there still is that disconnect though between people understanding, I guess, what social value is and the value for money piece that goes alongside it?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Sometimes I feel like, I don't know if other people feel this as well, but social value aspects of those sort of things feel like a bit of an add-on. Sort of maybe something's been thought about, the value of something's been thought about, and then they sort of tack on social value or engagement as a sort of tick box. And we obviously, we do those projects, and then often we change people's minds, and the success of the project or the success of the social value that we've achieved maybe changes those people's minds, and they think, oh, actually, this has worked. And we see the results, and we see that it is valuable. And we definitely push for social value to be more of a sort of driving point for projects. So a lot of the projects, that is the main focus, is the sort of the value that you get from it. I don't think it ever draws away from other values, because it's sort of like a cycle, isn't it? So any social value you give usually gives value to whatever else that project or that work is trying to achieve. So I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed in terms of making people aware of how valuable it is. But yeah, I don't think it ever takes away.
No, and I agree. And Dev's just put in the chat a great point. When the activity is interwoven, there isn't an idea this is extra stuff to be paid for. And I love that point you made of people somehow going, oh yeah, this is just an add-on, rather than going, well, it's actually why we're doing it. And it's that balance between the two is absolutely key. Thank you very much indeed. There's a question that come through from Jeremy. If frameworks don't include social value in the evaluation stage, how can we ensure social value is part of the project call-off contracts? And you, Alina, or Dom, I don't know if you'd like to come in on this one, because obviously this ties in very tightly, I guess, to what yourselves do when looking at those things. But if frameworks don't include that social value in the evaluation stage, how can we ensure it's still part of that ongoing contract? Dom, I've seen you come off mute.
Yeah, no, it's we're meeting contracts at every single stage of the journey, and that's been a huge piece of learning. But the engagement is the same. So we do care about individuals, families, and communities, and we want to support them. And so, I mean, it sounds terrible, but I don't give a two hoots what the contract says and the framework says. You're going to get offered, how can we help, as an open kind of question. And so frameworks, yes, we've got legacy bid promises in contracts where we engage with the corporate silos within them and just speak to them individually and go, where are the gaps in your delivery? Where are your stress points? How can we help? And so we're doing that consistently, even with contracts where the framework is either 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and the community needs has changed, and society has changed, and governments have changed, and So we have something ridiculous called secondary objectives by agreement, where it's just reframing social value to what is most effective to the projects that are on the ground, what's coming up, and just partnering with different organizations and different projects to make sure that we are just making that having that impact and leaving a legacy in that community. So the framework's not quite as important to me because it's that consistent delivery that is more important.
Deb said she loves that. We have some excellent social value being delivered where there is no social value in the contract. AA Woods, who were at the awards last night, are a cracking example of this with SNG. Chichi had actually said, based on the rhetoric question we had just before, we need to factor in the long-term savings and impact, the risk mitigation, compliance with regulation, innovation, competitive advantages, etc. And I couldn't agree more on that as well. I think it's really interesting when you were looking at the, if we don't include it at the stage, because I guess it ties a little bit into that previous question of, oh, well, then does it just become an add-on? And actually, it's all interwoven, as Debs has just mentioned there, in terms of why we're doing this in the first place. So thank you, Catherine, for again putting a couple of points in the chat there around make every contact count. Often those with the problem have a good idea of what the solution should be. There's questions come through again from Jeremy. If social value evaluation, thank you very much for the tongue twister there. If social value evaluation converts deliverables into an SROI value, does this benefit bigger outfits whom can steal the show for this element in a bid? Would anyone like to dive in on that one?
I think it's a funny one, to be honest. And I think there's added layers of complication to that question as well that I've kind of come across relatively recently in some tender activity, particularly when we don't set an SROI, but organisations report back to us sharing what their SROI would be using loads of different methodologies. So I think first off, the consistency in methods can be a real challenge. So I think if you're in a position where you're comparing apples with apples, maybe it's not too bad. So a lot of organisations at the tender stage use a point scoring system. So we do, I know Hyde do as well, and lots of others. So that financial proxy value, SROI sort of style thing doesn't necessarily get in the way of things at that tender stage. But we can have a bit of an eye on what that SROI may be in the future if those things were to be delivered. I think when you're counting the kind of nuts and bolts rather than the wardrobe at the end, like maybe it's a bit easier to compare and see what a large organization might offer against a smaller organization. But I also think we have to be quite careful, and I definitely have not sort of SNG found the sweet spot or the solution to this challenge yet, which is around how do we within the tender and within the social value of the tender value the inherent social value that is generated from an SME, or even like a community interest company or a social enterprise, if they're the ones that are bidding for the work, who may be in a similar position that might not be offering, say, like let's think, so if you were using, say, HACT's wellbeing valuation and you'd ask them to pledge against job outcomes or apprenticeships, that would be quite high value activity. So they may not necessarily be able to be pledging those activities. So they would potentially be at a kind of reduced level, but actually what we would know that working with them is going to create massive value. And maybe we're asking the wrong question, because maybe if we were using HACT's kind of system and we were asking about how they were going to support in their community with the relief of depression and anxiety or health and well-being, like those kind of things, then actually they would be at a major advantage, so I think it really comes down to us as organizations to think about how we're structuring the process and making sure that we're not creating an unfair playing field in the first place. But I think if it comes down to kind of looking at what's offered on the table, it can be a bit easier than necessarily looking at that value that is generated at the end of it. And we have to remember that what is offered in the tender is a pledge. And so that's great, that's brilliant, but if it's never delivered, it's worthless. So you can have all the ROI you want in the world in a tender, but if it isn't at the other end, there's no point.
Yeah, it's a point that drives me absolutely crazy, unfortunately. Aaron, I'm going to pass over to you on this one too, in terms of if social value evaluation converts deliverables into an SROI value, does this benefit bigger outfits?
So I think this is an interesting question, because when we talk about like tendering, bigger outfits generally have the advantage anyway, because of scale, because of experience, because they have bid writers which have experience. They will have much more an advantage in all aspects of a tendering process, because of a lot of other reasons rather than just their ability to deliver sort of SROI. So it's something that I think is where our procurement team work really hard to differentiate and make sure the questions are targeted in a way that can delve a bit deeper into the value for money piece, which is we talked about a bit earlier. But I think in terms of SROI, like particularly, this is why validation and like context are really important. We are seeing with our contractors that if they're just talking about delivering and we will base it on a pound value rather than a points value. If someone's committing to a really large sum, we can see that what they might be committing. So what we've done with our area-based approach is look at our communities, look at what the needs are, then shape our procurement process so that when our contractors are committing to these tenders, they're committing to social value that we need in our communities, so that we can shape what they will deliver to be what actually is what we need. So it's we've got a really tight grip on that at the moment with our community development leads, who are working directly with our contractors to make sure that they deliver on these commitments that they've made, which match what we need in our communities, which I guess gives it a much more even playing field, that if organizations of similar size and similar capacity can deliver the same thing, we want to make sure that they can, and we can do that. And I think the other kind of side of this coin is about, it is still quite new in this space. A lot of businesses and smaller businesses maybe don't quite have the same experience as they like Pinnacle, for example. Like you have a whole team set up, and we would be able to be helping with capacity building for smaller organizations who would like to tender but maybe don't have that skills there yet. Our community development leads are also being trained as community capacity builders, so they can help with organizations to tender and win contracts, because they can understand what is being asked for within social value. So I think it's a problem across the board in terms of procurement, but I think we are looking at ways and testing out ways to make sure that we don't give unfair advantage.
And I really appreciate that. And I think there's an interesting point there around the businesses I've worked with over the last decade plus, which has been that sometimes SMEs answer the question the best they can, but only within the knowledge set they've got, and so don't know actually about the further social value stuff that can be added. So get beaten on tenders by not knowing what they don't know, and then struggling to invest in people coming in and providing advice and support. But as Chishi just put in the chat there, wider support in this sense for SMEs can help. The point Aaron made about bigger organizations being an advantage generally. So Julian's team have offered this support, held sessions to support smaller contractors with bids and social value submissions. I think it's about sometimes SMEs understanding that actually social value now probably carries a lot more weight on its contracts than maybe it did a number of years ago, particularly if SMEs have been set up by people who've been in the game for a long, long time and gone, but I know how to do the work, I'm just pitched for it, and not knowing actually some of the other parts that are really important. It's quite good to see in the chat as well. So Julian had mentioned social value needs to be a part of regular contract meetings, as long as it's on the agenda and the client gives it the importance it deserves, and social value will happen regardless of it at tender stage. And Rajvinder said social value can go a long way to actually save business money. When we use supply chains to fund projects or use their expertise, we're often getting these at a competitive rate, more competitive rate than if we were to procure ourselves. Dom, I'm going to bring you in.
It's interesting about the big organisation versus the small. We now pass back, like Julian, this, whether we do it under the auspices of skills volunteering, I now bring professional services from my procurement team into local procurement for SMEs and BCSEs to be able to bid and aggregate bids. That's all for me part of the Procurement Act. That's the direction of travel, and so it is fundamentally part of our offering to support small organisations to feel more confident about bidding for these things.
Fantastic to hear. And Ben is just put in the chat there that it's definitely important when offering social value that you consider the offer you make in terms of what will benefit that area more where you operate. As one offer may benefit one area more than another, not a one-size-fits-all approach. And I think a lot of people in the group would absolutely concur with that. Although Aaron's just said there, our community development leads hold monthly meetings with our major work supply chain partners where we monitor their progress on social value commitments and address any concerns early on. So that's fantastic to hear, because that goes back again to that questions earlier of that Deb's mentioned, which is it's all good putting it into the tender, but if you don't actually complete on it, then what's the point? The next question that come up, because I'm aware we're kind of flying through time here, social value itself can feel subjective to the bidder. How can a surety of competent evaluation be achieved? Would anyone like to dive in on that one? Love the waiting bit. Debs, you're diving into that.
I was trying to sit on my hands. I know I'm awful for popping in, so I've tried to hold the silence. I think for me, I completely get it as well, and I often feel uncomfortable if I'm sort of faced with scoring a subjective tender to a degree, because I'm so conscious that it is my opinion. So I think when you're faced with that kind of question and you have to do it, I think having multiple people looking at that answer and then having a bit of a kind of debrief scrutiny style meeting where you come together with those different opinions and kind of weigh up, right, okay, so what is it? If you think this is a 3 and I think this is a 4, why? And what do we think it is collectively can be really helpful, because that just helps you sense check. But I kind of dislike that process so much that we decided to go with a sort of social value tender pledge design that meant that it would score itself based on what was offered. So for us, that takes out all of the subjectivity. It does mean that we have a question which is around, tell us about your previous delivery, that remains unscored. And I know that is sometimes a challenge across the sector, like if you're going to promise to do these things but you don't tell us how, and that you've got a track record of being able to deliver it, then how do we know you're telling the truth? And that is a genuine question and a genuine challenge. But I think for us, the benefit of having a system that scored itself and that was completely transparent and fair outweighed the challenge back of that second unscored question. So that's kind of what we do at SNG, and I know we're not alone in doing that.
Aaron, is there anything you would add there?
I wanted to just so our we're still working on, so our ambition at L&Q is to consider social value on every single contract we procure of any size, which is, we talk about L&Q, which is an incredible ambition. So at the moment, we sort of filter through the higher value contracts and look at those as a priority so that we can make sure that we make the most of our time. But in terms of the subjectivity of it, when we're procuring these contracts, we go through the social value portal, and I know it's for those unfamiliar with that, they call it the national TOMS, themes, objectives. I can't remember what the M is, but it measures that they have a framework across that you can say we're going to deliver this, and that adds up to a certain amount of social value, and it's completely objective, and it's completely out of our hands, and we can measure apples and apples in this space. So yeah, I think using a framework that is verified, and there's the research behind it to give you that SRI, that social value impact on particular outcomes and commitments. And we're asking for that at that kind of early stage. The issue with that is there's lots more than just one system. And when if we're talking to organizations like Pinnacle will probably know this, and other members in this group, where they're bidding for contracts at multiple housing associations, and they'll use different platforms and different programs and different frameworks, and you end up having to sort of use a whole suite of different approaches, and it does blur the line a little bit on what's consistent and what's not. And I think there is a challenge in there for the future of social value, and how do we make this consistent and fair across. But that's how L&Q, that's how we kind of look at it at the moment. It takes the onus off the scorers and puts it into a platform that can score, like what Deb said, completely separate to anyone's opinion or subjectivity.
Thank you, Aaron, and that's been backed up by Chi-Chi in the chat, who's just mentioned there that she agrees completely with Debs. It may seem controversial, but focusing on the point total of each offer means you're still comparing apples with apples. You can still have qualitative questions that are more for information and not scored. When you have, for example, the Match My Project to aid social value brokerage and replace the need to know about bidders' delivery approaches, then on the whole, it can work quite well. And Ben said there, info on the TOMs matrix that Aaron found on the social value portal, we just put the link in. Julian has just put in the chat as well that the Fusion 21 matrix and Hyde matrix are also really good ways of guaranteeing a flexible but easy to rank offer. We have got one more question that we've kind of had pre-sent through from Slido. If anyone does have any questions they'd like to ask, please do use the React tab at the bottom of the screen, and then you can raise your hand, and I'd love to bring you in. We'd love to hear from you. But the final question that come through, and again, this can be for our panel or anyone else who'd like to dive in. Does using financial proxies to measure social value oversimplify a complex field that should be viewed as qualitative rather than quantitative? Matt, I'm assuming that was to ask a question in a moment, not to answer that question. Fantastic. I'll bring you in just a moment.
This is I guess from my perspective on impact and reporting, and I face this across all performance measurements, and that where you try and quantify outcomes with a number it's a very tricky line, to walk. And what we see it in L&Q as is the financial proxies are a piece of the puzzle. It's not the entire performance. We don't use that as an entire way to represent how successful a team or a project or anyone's kind of being. It's a piece that we can use to talk, when we need to be quickly and talk about impact, and to a board member or in a meeting where you only have a few minutes. Using financial proxies can give you that really quick and understandable impact, and then you can relate that to return on investment and how well a project does compared to others. But it is not the whole picture, and we have to keep talking about that. So we don't just capture financial proxy information. We capture all the case studies, the anecdotes, photos, interviews, other metrics that we can use to give the color to what we're delivering. So it's a combination of these, and it's always a struggle to kind of find the right balance. But yeah, I think using it on its own is fraught with danger, and it needs to be a blended approach, and that's how we do it.
Toby, I can see you nodding along there as well during that, in terms of some of the thoughts being shared around those financial proxies.
Yeah, I suppose from sort of more of an on the ground perspective, when we sort of report the sort of success of the social value side of our projects, yeah, we do struggle with finding ways to sort of report that data, because it's very hard to sort of quantify, people enjoying a green space, or sort of the value that you provided to the community without sort of numbers or, financial proxies. Yeah, it's definitely like an issue we face because a lot of our data is environmental, and there's a lot of numbers around that. Sort of, we spent this much on this equipment, and this is the data we got from it. So that's a lot easier. But when it comes to engaging with the community, yeah, most of our sort of data is like pictures, interviews, surveys, things like that. But it's very hard to see where, what like money numbers, it's very hard to see what that means, I think. So I agreed with the reason I was nodding along was I just agreed with what Aaron was saying, basically. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And like I say, it's great to hear about that, kind of like I say, that on the ground perspective as well. Matt Corbett, I'm going to bring you in. Lovely to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, my question was really about funding and the financial challenges that the sector faces. And most of the social value teams are well, I think the majority of what I come across are based in the community investment functions of housing associations. And I just wonder whether the panel are any reflections, whether they're seeing with the increase in social value and the pressure on financial on budgets, whether they're seeing a reduction in community investment funding or core funding and the social value being used to sort of top up the funding that had previously been used on community investment activities, and whether that's a future trend we'll see a reduction in core funding for housing associations as they rely more on social value to do the sort of additional activities that we've talked about today. Just any reflections on that, please. Thanks, Matt.
You're very welcome. Would anyone like to dive in on that one?
I mean, well, Matt's my manager, so I might dip out of this one for now. But Debs, maybe
I don't mind diving in, particularly if it's all I think it seems to vary significantly across the sector. I think it is the reality. So at SNG, we as a result of the merger, we've kind of got a commitment to create a new community foundation, which has seen an increase in investment in the sort of historical community investment style work. So 100 million invested over 10 years. But that 100 million is not purely from the business. There is an expectation that external fundraising will come to support that kind of figure. And some of that will be from a specialist external fundraising team, and some of it will inevitably come through our social value supply chain. I don't necessarily think in our case specifically it's around kind of picking up the bill for some aspects, but I think it's about looking at how we can enhance and do more and generate more impact within the offers that we currently have. I mean, we're quite specific whenever we go for external funding that it needs to align to what we want to do and what we already do, or enhance that. And I don't see that being any different for our social value funding. But I do know that there are housing associations across the sector that are using specifically like a social value levy from suppliers to fund things like their employment and training teams, and to keep them in existence. So I think it just massively varies. Do I think it will continue and grow? Probably is the answer. I think it's inevitable that if funds are cut, then we need to be more creative and more innovative as well with how we kind of choose to use our social value delivery. We've recently, so one of our suppliers is Dewson's, built into their contract is a social value levy payment, and that levy payment is going to be used to fund an energy project for the next 2 years. So it's quite a sizable amount of money, and that is extending what we currently already do. If that the levy is already built into their contract, so maybe it might not so much go into ad hoc projects, but rather strategic projects that are going to make as much impact as possible. And I think that sort of activity may increase.
Thank you very much, Matt. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it did. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's very clear. Yeah.
Fantastic. Chichi said, as long as we don't begin to use social value to supplement our core responsibilities as a landlord,
absolutely.
If this happens, we're in dangerous territory and walking on messy legal ground.
Yeah, we definitely do. And so if you do have like that levy element built into your framework for social value asks, then like we were, I think Hyde did as well. So we were lucky to work with Echelon to create our matrix. And so having that legal wording in there surrounding that levy on this will not be used like on core activity within this is about creating new projects and enhancing what is already there. And the other thing that is really key, I think, on that is having a joint decision with that supplier. So with that levy, when it came in, we met with Dewsons and we said, so what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? And they came back and said, we really want to do something on the realm of heating and eating. And so that's what we did. And it was about having those joint kind of ambitions and aims and values, and working in partnership rather than necessarily a contract management style thing when it came to deciding on what was going to happen with that fund.
Fantastic. And actually Kelly's responded to Matt's question as well by saying, I do see that we will see a raise in social value being asked to do more in replacing loss in internal funding. It's going to be an interesting one to see how that plays out. Thank you, Kelly. I know you've been slightly blinded by the light if you've ever seen a camera, but lovely to hear from you as well today. Would anybody have any final questions before we go to final thoughts and a wrap up today? Any final thoughts, questions, feedback, just views on the week? Has anyone got anything else they'd like to add? Doesn't seem so. I think we've an hour and 45 minutes, we've covered an awful lot, but it's absolutely flown by. Debs, Aaron, I'll pass to yourselves just for kind of final thoughts on the week as a whole, and I guess on what comes in 2025.
I think I'm just gonna echo back to one of the last things that Fiona said, really around we have got this massive opportunity to create a climate where social value is the catalyst for change, and I think we know the gravitas of that, but I think it's about us embracing it and not being afraid to get it wrong, and just going out there and being creative. We have seen over this week such a variety of different activities that are possible when you take down the walls of what you think might be possible and just be open to a conversation. So I think for me, what I'm going to kind of walk away from is perhaps not be so prescriptive and think I know what might happen, but open that door to the opportunity that things could be even better if we create a bit of a blank page when we're having a conversation.
Thank you very much. And Aaron, any final thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, I guess, it's been such a great week to be part of and kind of share and challenge and discuss these issues and talk about social value and really raise the profile. For me, I mean, for the future, we're going to see in the new year, in the new calendar year, much more regulation coming in, much more focus on this as time goes on. And I think the challenge for us in the new year is going to be able to meet our ambition for that and make sure we have the right resource and the right approach, the right metrics, the right attitude internally and buy-in. It's great to see Fiona on this call and how passionate she is for this, and we're quite lucky that we have that buy-in from the top, and I think that's really where the future will be made in those boardrooms and getting this on the agenda and really seeing the value for it. So hopefully next year, we come back with another week, come back with more stuff to talk about, and looking forward to working with you, Matt, in this anymore. So thanks very much for having us.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. I want to say a big thank you to Debs and Aaron first and foremost for reaching out, and to Kelly as well for helping build these relationships and build this conversation to begin with. I'm actually amazed that we didn't hear from Kelly today, but it's if you follow her on LinkedIn, you've shared so much from what's gone on this week. So a massive thank you to you. I want to give a big thank you as well to Chi-Chi, who, despite not having a mic, has provided so much to this. And it's a shame you won't be on the recording because it zooms in on just the person speaking. But thank you so much for your insight. Obviously, a massive thank you to Fiona. I thought it was a really, really interesting opening keynote, and to have a chief exec of some of the size of L&Q to come on and talk about this so passionately, I think really showcases actually the difference social value is making, and the impetus and the thought that's going on about it. I want to give a big thank you to Toby, to Dom, to you, Alina, for joining us, but also a huge congratulations to them on winning the award this week. And I'd love to do this again next year. I think there's so much that comes out of it. We have more than 60 of us in the room today, really showcasing why it's so important, where the passion is. If anyone is writing up, I'm going to do a write-up myself, but if anyone is talking about this, please use the hashtag SVLG or SVLG Social Week, and just follow the page with it, continue with it, and hopefully we can just see this grow and grow. But for now, thank you to everyone who could join us on the Social Housing Roundtable today. I will send out a roundup with the recording on it if you did miss any. I look forward to hopefully seeing you at an event in the future. But for now, take care and thanks very much.
Thank you.